Hello, it's TitleSearch.com again. This is Dave. We're becoming aware of a more frequent type of title defect seen on foreclosure properties. And this comes from where a foreclosure rescue or flipper or some type of investor was involved with the property prior to foreclosure. And it may be that the flipper or property investor approached the owner, a delinquent property owner that had a mortgage past due, and offered some type of rescue on that property, maybe to buy them out of their mortgage, maybe to purchase their equity, possibly to maybe even defend the foreclosure for some period of time. But in the end, they ended up with the property. Well, many of these delinquent borrowers or homeowners are allowed to stay in their house for some period of time. The investor comes in and says, look, I want to buy your house. I'll give you some amount of cash, or maybe just take over the loan, and at some point take the property over and resell it. But in the meantime, I'm going to let you, as the prior owner, stay in the house for a month, a week, whatever the case may be. Well, that prior owner, that borrower, is then filing some type of suit for unfair lending or improper disclosures or some type of damage from that investor. Maybe they say they didn't give me enough money for the property, and that lawsuit becomes a cloud on the title. It's really common when the prior owner, delinquent borrower, is allowed to stay in the property, which is why if you're an investor, make sure that you have arrangements to have that prior owner be removed from the property or moved from the property as soon as possible. The longer they're in it, the more this can happen. You may have good intentions as an investor, but it could have bad results if they're allowed to stay in the property. They can look at, even if you have a lease agreement allowing them to stay and pay rent as a non-owner, they can bring that lease agreement to the court and say this is a de facto loan agreement because it was my property and they stole my equity. This can create a cloud after title for you, or even if you go to resell it to another user as a flipper or as an investor, they could have a cloud on their title. If you are a buyer of a property, always check to see if it has any kind of foreclosure history. If it had a foreclosure history even 2 or 3 owners ago, make sure that first of all there's no occupant in the property. Even if that occupant is supposed to be gone at closing, you need to make sure there's no occupants there long before that, so there's no claim of who's supposed to be living in the house or even who owns the house. If there's a prior foreclosure history and there's no occupant, you want to make sure that all the occupants were removed correctly, there's no claim of occupancy or ownership, and that all the foreclosures were handled the right way. If there was an investor involved, you should get some kind of documentation showing that the prior owner signed over their rights correctly. So you don't want to have a cloud on the title. So a foreclosure title defect is something that could affect you as an investor, or maybe even future owners who had no idea that property was ever in foreclosure.